All right. Thank you, everyone. Thanks, Gloriana, for organizing this and your team. Thank you, Mo, for a very wonderful talk. I got carried away, actually. Yeah. Okay. So my talk today is on the creation of English Igbo machine translation evaluation benchmark. The key idea is to have something to validate the tools out there for machine translation, especially for low resource languages like Igbo. Oftentimes, what we have is these machine translation systems built with synthetic data collected off the web and deployed like that without actually testing to see whether it solves the problem that they're expected to solve. Some of the challenges we had recently is translating things related to COVID-19 in many languages. It went to show that the models out there are not actually as good as they are claimed, the authors claim that they will be, especially for dealing with low resource languages. So it's important that we begin to think about ways to properly validate the tools that we have. So for Africa, as you may notice, sorry, I think it's running behind me. For Africa, Africa has more than 30% of all the living languages. But if you look at the number of authors that go to Africa, to the NLP conferences to represent Africa, find out that there's about 0.1%. So which means we do not have the opportunity to collaborate with others and find out how to actually create these tools. And that's one of the reasons why we're lagging behind. So the challenge is that generally the NLP community do not have the opportunity of also exploiting what is available for these low resource languages. So sometimes, even when they do the research, they will not be able to attend conferences, and then it kept on marginalizing them the more. So the initiative we are thinking about is to actually create more of these data sets and resources for African languages so that people can also play with them locally, even if they cannot attend big conferences, and create something that is similar to what's being created out there on their own organically, and see if it actually meets the need of the community that they're building it for. Okay, some of those initiatives now is the AfricaNLP. We came together and organized the first workshop at the ICLR 2020, where we presented the proposal to create this evaluation data set. And there were 40 presentations there, invited talks, panel sessions, and so on. And the other one is which is actually the one I am more keen about, is the Masakhane initiative, where Masakhane means building together in isiZulu, which is a South African language, where the focus is on building African NMT models. You know, basically, so most of the time it's still because most of the African countries were colonized, and therefore either English or French will be the major language in those places. So most of the time it's actually translating from English to those languages, but actually the versions we are looking at are versions of English or French that are spoken in those areas to come as close as possible to what people actually use in their day-to-day activities. So they provided NMT notebooks, neural machine translation notebook templates that people can use. I've shared the link. And incidentally, last year at the SCL 2019, there was a paper on JW300, which actually collected a lot of parallel data for low resource languages. Most of them are from the Jehovah's Witness materials, Bible, and other things that they have. So most African country languages, not most really, but a lot of African languages from Africa were contained in that, and that gave us something to work with. For instance, Igbo language has about 400,000 sentence pairs. Yeah, so that is something we can begin to work on, even though it's different from what we're looking at, clean, organically produced data set for evaluation. But for training, you have a large collection of parallel data that you can work with. Okay, so that is a boost to the Masakhane initiative. And so again, we partnered with the developers of the UCREL-NMT framework to build these notebooks, the templates that you can easily use, switch your language to, and then train something very quickly and come up with evaluation data set. So that's ongoing. But what my project is about is basically to do these key objectives. So one, to create at least 100,000 monolingual sentence pairs. It really needs to be more than that, actually, because we think that if we, like Mo said, if we have to build embedding models with clean Igbo data, we have to be sure that we have enough homogeneous data set, data collection of monolingual data to build that. Then we look at sentence pairs, at least 10,000 of them across different, genres that are also local. That's mostly sentences that are produced from the way local speakers speak Igbo, and human translated or human validated, even if they are not translated. If they are collected online, like from the Jehovah's Witness website, they have to be validated by human beings who speak the same language. So we build strong baselines for them, and we release them publicly. Okay, and then building these strong baselines, what we are also looking at is that we don't just check how it performs from English to Igbo, but also from Igbo to English, to be sure that it's doing what is expected to do. Okay, so so most of the things we are going to build will come from the news genre. Okay, so far we have collected approximately 383,000 sentences, and in the monolingual side of things, most of the sources were from Opus, the JW, Igbo radio website, the BBC Igbo. Luckily, we have that as well. And then other local resources, all other local resources that came from literature, TV, radio, newspapers, so on and so forth. Okay. Now, for the parallel data, our target, again, like I mentioned, is to build 10K sentences. And we want the topic coverage to, span across politics and all these things, okay? And the aim when we set down to translate is to achieve conceptual equivalence. The problem with Igbo is that sometimes the way, and I'm sure it's not just Igbo, most of the languages are not exactly related to things like the languages like English. The conceptual equivalence is also it's sometimes difficult to achieve when you are translating from them. And I'll give you some of these examples. If you are talking about being thirsty, for instance, it's the literal translation of this, if you look at that line, is the throat is calling me firewood. But the meaning is that I am thirsty. And that is because the word that is used in Igbo to construct that, which is akbere na akpomonko, are actually words that have very little to do with being thirsty. But that's the way Igbo constructs that. And that's because the thirst, which is to be dry or to become dry, is represented by these two words, bonko, which is the verb and the nominal phrase. So we needed experts to help us get such translations correctly. Again, there are more examples. If you want to say, I love you, for instance, the translation is from Genanya, and if you want to translate back to English, it sounds like I see you with I. It has nothing to do with love as well. We have the challenges of contextual variation, which I believe exists in other languages, where a particular word will mean different things, and therefore has to change in the form that is being used, depending on the context that it is being used in. So you can see play. Play will have to be translated to something that shows throwing if it's about basketball, and play if it's about football and things like that. All right. So again, you can see a number of other examples, which I don't think I will go through. The point I'm trying to make there is that, for instance, the first one, the concept of OBECK, which is to be confident, will span across. So it's like multi-word expressions where some of the things in between do not actually contribute to the meaning itself. All right. So we needed to build all these translation guidelines for our translators to work with. Actually, it wasn't developed by me. It was developed by those who know better how to translate, the linguists among us. Okay, so these are other examples. For instance, what do we do with words that do not exist in Igbo at all, but are created, like data, internet, and so on? There hasn't been any laid down guidelines to those ones. So we needed to deal with that as well. Okay, so far in the repository which we shared in the paper, we do have a total collection of 10,752. We just generally splitted them into training and testing sets. Training and testing sets, just for us to be able to prototype a translation algorithm for a translation model for the translation itself. But our major aim is that we're going to use large collections like what we got from the JW300 and train the model, and then use our own data set as evaluation data set. Okay, so basically what we're trying to do is to apply some of the most standard and most current state-of-the-art tools, like the transformer, the encoder-decoder models. However, we know that in some cases, some of these modern approaches do not work for low-resource language as effectively as it's being reported. So what we also want to do in our analysis, in our analysis, is we are going to do a fairly good collection of experiments that cover both the state-of-the-art and the classic methods to doing these things across different learning settings. Okay, all right, so we didn't do this work alone. I was here with Paul, but there are also other people from Nigeria who were helping us to organize the translators and the linguists that worked with us. And we have some support from Facebook AI Research as well, and we are grateful to them. So thank you. That's actually my presentation. I have prototyped something, so I have no result yet to give you, but this at the stage where this is, we are still working on building the actual translation model. And when we do that, like I said here, we'll begin to compare them with the existing models like the Google Translate models and other models to see whether it makes sense. I was asked a question about why do you want to do another translation model when there are a lot of other things that are working out there? And it's a difficult question to ask and answer, but the point is that those models have not actually been properly tested. And if so, when we had COVID-19 translations, they would not be failing as they were failing. So they needed to be tested properly. And we also need models that capture the way people speak their languages in their places. We also need models that actually are a bit more lateral, a bit more can translate not just from the big languages to the small languages, but also the other way around, and also between two non-big languages. Okay, so that's my presentation, and thank you for listening.
Thanks a lot, Ignatius. So we've got about 10 minutes now for questions. If anyone has a question, they can raise their hand as before or put it in the chat. I guess to start off, I have a... Paul Rayson. Yeah, go ahead, Paul.
Thanks. I shouldn't really ask a question on my own co-authorship paper, but kind of just occurred to me towards the end there. So we're working on Igbo-English at the moment, but what other language pairs with Igbo, something else, would be appropriate? I mean, what are the other major translation boundaries that you need to cross from Igbo into other languages?
Okay, thanks, Paul. If I use Nigeria as an example, that also holds in Africa the largest collection of living languages in Africa, there will be Igbo to Yoruba. These are all ongoing on the Masakhane project at the moment. Igbo to Yoruba, Igbo to Hausa, possibly Igbo to Swahili, just moving away from languages that are close to us, the Niger-Congo languages, we call them. So in a homogeneous setting like a particular country, the languages that are there should be able to translate effectively from one language to the other. And so that's in the pipeline as well. But right now, we needed to use this opportunity to fashion out how to effectively achieve this evaluation benchmark line, and then transmit it to doing the other work. There are other colleagues from other languages that are working in that direction as well. So hopefully at some point we'll be partnering with them.
Okay, cool, thanks.
There's another hand risen by Mahmoud.
Yep.
Thanks a lot, Ignatius. My question is mainly like kind of hypothetical question. So with many African countries bordering other countries that speaks other languages, so and then there will be like some kind of overlap between those languages. So for example, not entirely, but in Hausa there is some overlap with some of the Arabic kind of like words. Will a translation in between helps all these African languages to be better translated to each other's?
Yes, yeah, that's a good question. I wouldn't say I know exactly how to answer that, because we've started encountering those challenges. Because sometimes some languages, for instance, Yoruba, is spoken by a lot of people that are bordering Nigeria from the west, and Hausa is also spoken by a lot of other countries that are from the sub-Saharan area that are not even Nigeria, Niger Republic, and so many other countries, Chad and so on. So I think the way to do that is to kind of dissolve the physical country-based boundaries and uphold the language boundaries themselves, so that we train on the languages which could possibly span countries. But I don't know. I think the point is, if we have identified those languages as living languages, maybe by ethnologue and all that, we could extract what we can from the languages and use them to build the models we build. There are other challenges which obviously surfaced in your presentation, where we have dialects even within languages, and we don't have the standards to know which to use. But we somehow have to standardize that, because there is a possibly not very well defined boundaries between one language and the other. Some of these communities were on their own before colonization happened, so they know what they were speaking. Okay, So I don't know if I answered your question directly, but if the simple answer would be yes, we will be looking at languages as the languages, not as spoken by one country or the other.
Yeah, that makes sense. Thanks, Ignatius.
Okay. Yeah, well, Ignatius, I had a question regarding the problem you described in the beginning of your talk with African researchers being underrepresented at NLP conferences. And I was wondering whether you think that the current situation with conferences moving online will help with that. And maybe next year we will have observed an increase in African authors
participation. Yes, I think so. Actually, if what I observed from the ICLR is anything to go by, people were more able to participate from different places, especially from Africa, than they were in the past. And I know this because last year I co-organized the workshop, the Black in AI workshop, New Rips, and of course, most of those snapshots I showed here were taken from some of the publications that came from the refusal of visa by the Canadian embassy. So yeah, it was more difficult for us to get people to come and physically participate than we experienced with the ICLR. That's one positive, because if we begin to create platforms that support people to effectively participate from wherever they are without the need to travel, more Africans will be able to participate. They'll be able to learn more about what the state of the art is. They will be able to apply that to what they are doing and be up to date with what they are doing and possibly improve their work. So I think it will help, if that answers the question. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you. Okay. Oh, Andrew, yes, go ahead.
Thanks for the great presentation, Ignatius. I was wondering, are you going to, when you do create the models, are you going to consider model sizes? As in, some of the models now are fairly large, and I was just wondering, when creating models, will you be looking at various model sizes from hundreds of millions of parameters to perhaps tens of millions of parameters, or even smaller, perhaps?
Yes. Well, of course, I think generally the smaller and the more effective, the better. At this stage, I can't tell you that we are thinking about that now at this stage, but we are collecting. Just I think yesterday or 2 days ago, Google released a publication on the transformer and confirmed that it does appear that the what makes the transformer effective is actually the encoder side of things. That in terms of the decoder side, that is not any better than the normal RNN. So there are all sorts of techniques that are happening, and they were saying that in the context of low resource languages, by the way, and that's why I paid attention. And some of the things you shared with me about what worked for big languages and that don't work for low resource languages. So we will be thinking about creating things that will be usable, because most of the time people from those regions may not be able to access things that are too heavy, especially to use it in their day-to-day work. And so we will be considering that at some point, but at this stage, I think we want to just make sure that we have a standard way of creating effective evaluation data sets. Emphasis at this stage is not focused on the techniques of building things. Eventually, we're going to come with a strong baseline model and put it out there. If it's light, that would be good. And then hopefully people will now get on board and make it better, either making it lighter or making it more effective for the translation work itself.
Yep, that makes sense. Yep, sounds good.
Okay, thank you.